A lifetime of service comes to an end. Prince Philip is to retire from public life. The Duke of Edinburgh will be 96 this year. The palace say it's his decision and it isn't health-related. As he continued his public duties today, the Prince was still in high spirits.
I'm sorry to hear you standing down. I'll stand up much.
I'm live at Buckingham Palace on this historic day. The Queen has described the Duke as her strength and stay, and the Prime Minister led the tributes to 70 years of service.
From his steadfast support for Her Majesty the Queen to his inspirational Duke of Edinburgh Awards and his patronage of hundreds of charities and good causes.
We'll look back at Prince Philip's 7 decades of duty and humour.
You are constantly aware that if you put the foot wrong, then he will chew your head off. But he's a lovely guy. But if you put a foot wrong, then he'll be on you like a terrier.
From Buckingham.
Good evening from Buckingham Palace, where Prince Philip today called time on his decades of public service. The Duke is stepping down from royal duties in the autumn. Not, we're told, because of poor health, but because he'll soon turn 96 and simply feels the time is right. The Prince was back on duty today and he even had time for a joke about standing down, telling one guest that he can't stand up much longer. Our royal editor Chris Shipp has the first of our reports as Prince Philip retires.
At precisely midday today, just as it was scheduled in the diary, the Duke of Edinburgh arrived at St James's Palace with the Queen. The lunch here was going ahead as planned, even though 2 hours earlier the staff of the royal household had been summoned to a meeting to be told that Prince Philip was about to withdraw from public life. When the staff had been told, so then was the rest of the world. It came in the form of a statement from Buckingham Palace. His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh has decided that he will no longer carry out public engagements from the autumn of this year. In taking this decision, the Duke has the full support of the Queen. That announcement means the longest-serving consort to the longest-serving sovereign will be stepping down 2 months after his 96th birthday. So at today's pre-planned engagement, he was happy to make, as he has done so often, a joke or two. This one was about his own advancing years.
I'm sorry to hear you standing down. I'll stand up much.
Next, Prince Philip chatted with the former Speaker of the House of Commons, Baroness Betty Boothroyd, about their hearing aids. And with the painter David Hockney, he pointed at his ears and joked, "We've all got them."
You also got some of these things, haven't you? We've all got them.
It was only in recent months, the palace said today, that the Duke had made the personal decision to step down this year. And those who'd spent lunch with him said he was in good form.
Very good form.
I'm a great fan of his, and I think everybody appreciates what a wonderful consort he is.
It is a glimpse of two very happy people which appeals to us.
It means that his royal duties, first as fiancé to a princess in 1947 and then consort to a queen, will now end 70 years after they started.
From his steadfast support for Her Majesty the Queen to his inspirational Duke of Edinburgh Awards and his patronage of hundreds of charities and good causes, his contribution to our United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the wider world will be of huge benefit to us all for years to come.
And a similarly warm tribute was paid by other politicians, no matter what their views of the monarchy.
We founded the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. Indeed, I did the Duke of Edinburgh's award at school and got a silver medal for it. I wish him well in his retirement.
I think he's always gone about his public service as well with a healthy, at times even a mischievous sense of humour. So I think people today will be appreciative of everything he's done, but want to wish him all the very best for a peaceful and happy retirement.
At Buckingham Palace, the military ceremonies went on today, but the news that there would be an announcement broke overnight and led to speculation in Australia, America and elsewhere about the Duke's health. So there was some relief for those who were outside the palace this morning.
We didn't know what it was all about. It was a surprise, but I guess he's entitled.
Obviously wish him well in his retirement, and we'll miss Mrs. Japes and his gags.
He's entitled to it, isn't he? You know, how old is he, 95? Yeah, so he is entitled to it.
His is a face which has been part of British life for 7 decades. Always next to and just behind the Queen, he will continue to be seen at times, but his royal diary will now be closed for good.
And Chris is with me now. So Chris, why now for this announcement?
Quite simply, Mary, age. He's 96 next month. And think about it, we've just had a year recently in which the Queen became the longest serving monarch. Then we had a year in which he had her 90th birthday, and it was decided that this would be the year that he would step down. And also, his diary for the autumn starts to fill up at this time of year, so they wanted to start declining invitations from now on. What will it mean? Will we see the Queen on her own a lot more? Yes, we will. Will we see the Queen with other members of the royal family? Yes. Will we see more of Princes William and Harry? Yes. As a palace official put it to me earlier, this is Team Windsor stepping up. Now, I don't think this is the last we will see of the Duke. I suspect he will still be on that balcony on some big occasions. I suspect also he might try to get to the commemorations at the Cenotaph in November. But the diary for now, the formal diary, is closing.
All right, Chris, thank you. Well, many of us will simply not have known a time when Prince Philip wasn't actively serving this country. Ever since he married the princess, who would become Queen, that role has come first, even when it meant sacrificing his own career. Here's Paul Davis on the Duke's duty and service.
Just before Armistice Day, Princess Elizabeth and Lieutenant Mountbatten went to Westminster to pay their own personal tributes to the fallen.
This is where it began. 7 decades of duty and service, usually at the side or just behind the woman who is about to become Queen.
Together, the princess and her future husband planted their crosses in the Empire Field of Remembrance.
The young naval officer Philip Mountbatten already knew about service, of course. He'd served in the war and could have risen to the top in the Royal Navy, but that ambition had to be set aside when he married.
Naturally disappointing, because I'd just been promoted to commander. And in fact, the most interesting part of a naval career was just starting. Being married to the Queen, it seemed to me that my first duty was to serve her in the best way I could.
And that would mean a very different life. Often in a spotlight he would not otherwise have sought. This was the newlyweds' coronation tour of Jamaica, one of 637 overseas trips he's now made as Duke of Edinburgh.
This indeed was an historic occasion.
There have been countless duties at the Queen's side, meeting the leaders of the day, and some 22,000 solo engagements, including this visit to British troops based in Germany, where he took command of a tank. Alongside the state duties, almost 800 charities and other organisations have enjoyed his patronage.
The expedition was never intended as an endurance test, but it becomes pretty near to one during the descent.
In 1956, he gave his name to a scheme that would encourage generations of young people to enjoy and test themselves in the outdoors.
The main purpose of the scheme is to help boys to find activities which will give them pleasure and satisfaction, perhaps for the rest of their lives.
The environment and the natural world have been another long-standing passion. For 15 years, he was the high-profile president of the World Wildlife Fund, often championing endangered species.
They've got nostrils on the end there. If people in this generation have any feelings whatever for their descendants, they ought to be a great deal more active in the conservation of nature and the conservation of resources generally.
For 70 years, only the worst of ill health has kept him away from duty. During the Jubilee celebrations, he famously stood for hours in the rain, bringing on a bout of illness. His causes will see less of him now. Others will take his place alongside the Queen. After 7 decades, it's time to pass the baton on. Davis, ITV News.
Well, the Prince has long been a huge support to the Queen, a constant presence in public and a comfort and confidant in private. She's going to miss him at royal events more than anyone. Emma Murphy reports now on what it means for the Queen to be away from her strength and stay.
To the country, she has been a constant for 7 decades. As her consort, he is her constant, at her side for most of her life, in a partnership of love, respect and duty.
I think they're an extraordinary double act. The Queen is quite conservative with a small c. She's quite reluctant to change. She does her duty. The Duke of Edinburgh is much more progressive. He is in a hurry, he's impatient. And so between them, they cover the waterfront. They've been an extraordinary couple, and we have been so blessed to have them.
It was in 1950s Britain that he pledged his public commitment at the coronation.
I, Philip, will become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship.
As he kissed his wife, he touched the crown, an acknowledgement of his readiness to bear its burden with her, and so he has with a life of public service.
It was very unusual for a young, ambitious man to give up his career in the 1950s, and he was embarking, I'm sure, on a very successful career in the Navy. So in a way, he was a pioneer in that as well, to make the decision to give up his career and support his wife, the Queen, for the rest of their life, I think was a really big decision.
That decision has led to decades of support and wise counsel, which have endured through dark days, through days of duty where he's offered a guiding hand, or indeed more practical support ferrying the guests about, to moments of celebration and ceremony, a commitment acknowledged by the woman he has supported throughout.
But he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years, and I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
So now a new era begins, with the younger royals at the Queen's side. The Duke may not be so obvious in public in the future, but in private, the support he offers as consort will remain as constant as ever. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Prince Philip is patron of 785 organisations, and although he's stepping down, he'll still be involved with many of them. And that's especially true of carriage driving. His love of the sport stretches back more than 40 years, and he's not about to give it up, not least because he pioneered it. Damon Green reports from Derbyshire on the Prince's passions and patronages.
In the grounds of a stately home in Derbyshire, people are gathering to spend a weekend pursuing a sport they all love. And yet this is a sport which would not even exist without the man who invented it, wrote the rules and remains a passionate competitor to this very day. Carriage driving has been the Duke of Edinburgh's pastime, his hobby for over 40 years. He pioneered its development and represented his country and made plenty of friends along the way. George is an old teammate from the British squad, now 83 himself, but full of fond memories of his rival and friend.
So I'm just a scrap dealer from Cumbria, and he's always treated me with the greatest of respect. And I'd like to call him a friend. I don't know if he called me his friend, but we always have a conversation, a bit of catch up on things, but he's been a wonderful man, a man's man.
The National Horse Driving Trials at Catton Park are an event that wouldn't be complete without the Duke, and he'll be here as a spectator. Organisers say it'll be impossible to stop him getting involved.
He's been a very keen driver, he's been a very successful driver, he's represented his country at this sport, and now that he's no longer actively driving, he's keen to help, to be a steward, to be a timekeeper and such like, all of which things that other people who participate in the sport follow very much the same line. So he in that sense, he's one of us.
Retiring from public life doesn't mean he'll stop doing the things he loves. He'll be driving his own carriage at an event at Windsor Castle next week, and if he enjoys home advantage there, well, nobody will mind too much. Damon Green, ITV News in Derbyshire.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. After the debate, the French presidential candidate's final push for votes. But Marine Le Pen is egged and jostled on the campaign trail. That story and the rest of the day's news after the break. Hello again, welcome back. Emmanuel Macron has taken a big step towards becoming the next French president after he was judged to have won the final TV debate before Sunday's election. And the day didn't get any better for his far-right opponent, Marine Le Pen, who was egged during last-minute campaigning. From Paris, here's our Europe editor, James Mates.
It was ill-tempered, at times chaotic, and by the end, the French electorate may have learned little, except that their likely next president, Emmanuel Macron, can keep his cool under relentless provocation. This was almost certainly Marine Le Pen's last chance to overturn a persistent 20% deficit in the polls, and there's no sign she made a breakthrough. Indeed, this morning, her day only got worse, as, rocked by bad reviews of last night's performance, she was hit by a protester's egg and had to be hurried protectively away. By contrast, Emmanuel Macron seems to be sailing smoothly to victory on Sunday, even getting a warm endorsement from former President Obama today. His task was to convince the French that despite his inexperience, he was presidential.
The test for us was about his credibility and about the fact that he stayed really quiet. He didn't answer to our insult. There were many insults. She was trying to do something like Donald Trump was trying to do in the United States during the campaign.
Macron's final advert spoke not about France, but those in the UK who in the days after the referendum regretted their Brexit vote.
I'm shocked that we actually had voted to leave. I didn't think that was going to happen. My vote, I didn't think was going to matter too much.
The worst is not impossible, says Macron, hoping to warn the French against abstention or protest votes. Probably the only threat to Macron would be mass abstention by those who don't care for either candidate. 60% of his voters do admit they're only doing so because there's no one better. But they all count and are likely to be enough to get him across the line. James Mates, ITV News, Paris.
Here, voters have been heading to the polls for local council and mayoral elections. Elections are taking place in 88 councils in England, Scotland and Wales. Mayors will also be elected in 6 newly devolved so-called super regions. The Health Secretary wants to hold a public inquiry into the breast surgeon Ian Patterson, who was convicted last week of carrying out unnecessary operations on patients. Jeremy Hunt says lessons must be learned. And BBC bosses have criticised Sir Cliff Richard over legal costs he's run up, totalling £800,000. The pop legend is taking the broadcaster to court after it showed footage of his house being raided and named him as a suspected sex offender. And finally, we return to our main story this evening, the retirement of Prince Philip. The Duke has always been keen to put people at their ease with a smile and a laugh, although occasionally his wit has raised a few eyebrows. Nina Nanar now on the Prince's enduring humour and character.
You just know he'd have had a cheeky one-liner ready to deliver if only Donna the elephant could understand. It was just one of those occasions when Prince Philip has kept his thoughts to himself. He's not known for that. Though mostly when he has spoken over the years, warm laughter has been the result. Here, officially opening a sexual health centre in North London, he had this observation.
I am slightly concerned because this is now the third of these I've opened. And I can't help feeling that trust ought to take some of its own advice.
Thank you very much. At least you're all legitimate now, he then remarked. And this was the image that made the papers the next day.
I'm going to stand there on a wing saying, hello, folks.
Philip Schofield spent time with the Prince for a documentary last year. His humour may be irreverent at times, says the presenter, but he means well.
Is the way he puts people at ease. I watched him walk into a group of terrified youngsters who all had their shoulders up like this. He'll say something vaguely inappropriate, which they loved, shoulders drop, and he gets the best out of it. He's a lovely guy, but if you put a foot wrong, then he'll be on you like a terrier.
Just ask the poor photographer, who was taking a bit too long for the Prince's liking. Get a move on, he's unceremoniously told. And here, his driver gets the same treatment.
The Queen and the Duke certainly do seem particularly at ease.
But for all his occasional displays of bad temper caught on camera, at times he's simply a good sport on camera too.
Private or public couples, quite a romantic gesture.
Finish? He's a Navy man, you know, he's a soldier, and he's got a kind of salty humour, and I think he bites his tongue more now than he used to do. And I don't blame him for feeling at times, you know, penned in a sense. He wasn't born to it. He didn't ask for it at all.
I've seen the world's most experienced pluck on David.
Yesterday he was joking again, retiring maybe, but still playing to the crowd. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
Here we go. Final thought now from our royal editor, Chris Shipp. Now, he famously doesn't like a fuss, does he? There's been a bit of that today, but there's been a lot of affection and a lot of respect as well.
Yeah, he won't have cared for the fuss that he's been part of today. But let's think about Prince Philip for a moment. The Queen has been our head of state for 65 years, as we know. But throughout that period, every day he has been there by her side. And a former palace official said to me earlier that the Queen was always less happy when she was having to do engagements without him. So I think this is going to have an impact on the Queen, although the palace say her diary will continue as normal. But this is a man who's been in the public eye since 1947. He's part of our history. He's part of British life. And I think what the announcement will mean today is that chapter, that particular chapter in British history, will close at the end of the summer.
Controversial sometimes, but held in affection.
Yes, I think it was always a little too blunt for some people, but for those diplomats around him, but he always had a great sense of humour.
All right, Chris Shipp, thank you very much indeed. And that is all for now. Tom Bradby's back with news at 10, but from me and all the team here at Buckingham Palace, have a very good evening. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.